It's 1983. A first-class stamp costs 20 cents. Minimum wage is $3.35. People said things like gnarly and rad and dude. War Games and Flashdance was in theaters, whilst Dukes of Hazzard and Alice was on television. ARPANET changes to the Internet Protocol, while the Gipper is in the White House, and I am 12 years old, probably sporting a denim jacket and a Walkman, and some tracks. I'm sure I had tracks. But more important than all that, TSR Hobbies reorganizes into TSR Incorporated and releases this. Frank Mentzer's 1983 version of Basic D&D. Frank had 3 goals with this new edition: to make it fun, playable, and true to the spirit of D&D. So, in the Player's Manual, he included a solo adventure for the reader to play while they learned this game that was overtaking the world. Today, we play that adventure. Let's go. So thank you guys for watching this video. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a lot of fun. I never owned this 1983 box set. I owned the 1981 box or the 1980 box. It was the first box like this that ever came out for Dungeons and Dragons. Before Chainmail had an edition, then they had 3 D&D books in the 70s. Throughout the 70s, it was gaining in popularity. It came out in 71, I believe, Chainmail, which was my birth year. So I was destined to be a D&D guy. Frank Mentzer got involved in the late 70s with the organization, began going to Gen Cons. And in 1980, he won a Dungeon Master contest and just got in with the group. Eventually became creative director, I believe is what it was called. And then in 1983, he created the second Dungeons and Dragons basic box set. Very, very cool. I got the DM guide. I got the Player's Manual the other day on eBay. I love these things. They weren't that expensive. Blew my mind. Also in 83, AD&D, Arneson's version of D&D, I believe, came out with Monster Manual 2. I got this book as well. Loving this stuff. Going back to my childhood, I guess. And so we're going to flip through the PDF as we get started. I'm not going to flip through the real books because they're 40-some years old, just like me, 40-some years old. But yeah, so Frank was a very unique individual. They asked him to be in charge of a D&D type of mail-in group or a group type of thing, and that's when he created the role-playing Guild of America, RPGA, I believe it was Role-Playing Guild of America. So if you ever own one of those boxes, you'll find some cards with the RPGA, which was Frank's brainchild. He was very into role-playing. So when he wrote this box, and he eventually went on to write 4 more boxes for the next several years, the Expert Edition, the Immortals Edition, which was the last one, Companion, and there was the Black X Masters Edition. It was a black box. So if you want something really cool to look to collect, try and get those 5 versions. That would be awesome. Let me know if you do. I want to see pictures. Pictures, please. So let's jump in. I'm going to walk you through some of the initial rules, or just how it's laid out. I know you guys probably already know, but I want to give this thing the honor it deserves. This may be a video that goes more than just one episode, which is different than anything I've ever done with this channel, but there's that. And before we get started, I want to plug my Etsy store. I'm going to put it down here in the description. Just go out and check out my Etsy store if you would. I've got a bunch of old school D&D type things. I've got a bunch of Red Rising sci-fi type things. If you don't know Red Rising, you're missing out. It's one of the greatest book series of all time. Darrow, Severo, Mustang, Ragnar. You got it. You can't miss it. You need to get Red Rising. That's just a plug for Red Rising. But I digress. Let's hop in the manual. All right, so here we go. Here's the box. Basic rules. You'd find 2 books inside, a Player's Manual, a Dungeon Master's Manual. The Player's Manual screams at you and says, read this book first. So as we scroll down, we'd open the book up. You get a preface from Frank, and the whole book, the whole theme is easy to read, understand, 10 years old. He tells you how to use the book. Here's direction. So you kind of do a pre-adventure before the solo adventure, and the pre-adventure is really just kind of reading. You throw the dice a couple times, but it's introducing the kids, the people who are reading this for the first time, to some very basic concepts, because what we have to realize is most people didn't know these things. Most people didn't know what a hit point was, or abilities, or even a dungeon. He starts explaining what a dungeon is in the very first paragraph on the first page, and how you role play, how your abilities work. So the pre-adventure holds your hand. It says your hometown is just a small place with dirt roads. Talks about how you're getting off, and your first adventure. You find a cave, and you've heard about a man named Bargle. We don't like Bargle. Bargle is a sort of a bandit, so he's introducing you to bad guys. As you approach, you see an ugly little dude that's a goblin. This is what he looks like. He runs away. Here's how you hit. So now you're in a fight. You've got to, if you roll 11 or less, you miss the goblin. If you roll 12 or higher, you hit. So he has you fight for a little bit. The goblin eventually runs away. Here's the explanation of hit points, constitution and hit points, and how you got 8 hit points. Then you stumble upon a snake, and there's treasure. So you get your first hands on treasure, and it's just delightful as you read through this. It's very, very cool. You get poisoned. You take damage from the snake. If you get poisoned, it talks about saving throws. Basically, he makes sure that you're hurt a little bit, because then you stumble upon a young cleric, and she helps you. She tells you what a cleric is, because you don't know what a cleric is. She gives you a heal. You soon find out about charisma. You know, you're talking to a lady in a dungeon. You gotta know about charisma, about wisdom, all kinds of things. You stumble upon some ghouls. You keep going. She pulls you back from the ghouls. She tells you about how she can turn the undead. Anyway, you stumble upon Bargle. You find out he's a magic user. And Bargle, spoiler alert, kills the young lady. No matter what you do, she's dead from a magic missile. So she wasn't very tough. Whether you get out, or whether you save and you don't become his buddy, he tries to charm you, or you don't save and you get out and you take her back to the priest in town, you escape either way. She's dead. Sorry for the bad news, guys. But and there she is. There's him looking at her, and she's sad because she got hit by a magic missile. And man, I love these Elmore freaking illustrations. I can't believe. Anyway, she's dead. You win, and then it goes on to tell you more about your character, your alignment, your character sheet. At the top, fill in your name, your player's name, what your character, whether you want to be lawful. And this is interesting because this isn't how we really think anymore, but your fighter is one of the good guys, so you're lawful. If you're lawful, you're good. Chaotics are the bad guys, lawfuls are the good guys, and neutrals are the meh. It tells you about put a character sketch. You might want to sketch it out. He's telling you how to do everything. I find this so fascinating. For example, if your character's name is Hawk, you might wish to draw a falcon-like birds. So let's take a look at our character sheet over here in Paint. This was our basic character sheet, player's name. That was mine. I'm classic role player. You actually had a dungeon master box, because when you played back then, you played with 4 or 5 of your buddies. Usually the dungeon master never changed. Not really sure why you had to have that, but whatever. Fighter's name is Rolf, of course. He's a lawful fighter, level 1. My armor class is 4, according to the book. My hit points are 8, according to the book. These are my abilities with my adjustments: 17, 9, 8, 11, 16, 14. Here's my saving throws that I got to make. And they had a special skills section, which fighters have no special skills. They're just fighters. But languages, I could speak common right off the bat. And they have a thing called alignment tongue that they talked about, where lawful people can speak to lawful people in a tongue that chaotics and neutrals can't understand. Same with neutrals and chaotics. Very interesting. Since you explored some of the caves earlier, you find yet another entrance to venture into this time. After finding a suitable cave, you pause to be sure you're ready. The caves are dark and dreary, as you remember from the last time. So you get out your lantern, light the wick, using that tinderbox you bought. Then carefully you step into the first room. The room you are in is 50 feet square, with a 10-inch wide exit in the middle of the north, south, east, and west walls. The ceiling of the room is 15 feet up, but the corridors are only 10 foot tall. The walls, floor, ceilings are made of rough rock. There are some cracks and crevices in the rock walls, all very small. Standing in the exact center of the room is a stone statue of a woman in armor. You examine it carefully, and finally, you even touch it, but it is merely a statue. Nothing magical or special. You have entered this 50-foot square room by the southern corridor, which leads out to fresh air and sunlight. The other corridors are dark. The light from your lamp helps, but shadows linger in the corners of this large room. Search the room carefully and you find a small scrap of paper in a niche, which is a small hole in one wall. Opening it, you discover a note written in the common tongue. Rats east, goblins north, beware west. You can also see parts of the corridors leading out of the room. From this room, you can go many ways. Do you want to go west, east, north, or south? The corridor goes 50 feet east and opens into another room. What are you expecting here and why? You have found 1 or 2 clues. If you haven't found or heard any clues, read 11. If you've only found a note that mentioned creatures, read 44. If you've only heard creatures, read 71. If you did both, read 59. As you approach the room, you hear more squeaks. You wisely shutter your lantern, leaving only a dim reddish glow, and peek into the room. You see 3 giant rats scurrying around and some scattered treasure nearby. Do you want to go back? Talk to them? Try to scare them? Or attack? You decide to scare the rats. You leap out and scream, "Ha!" waving your sword and flashing the light around. One of the giant rats runs off to the north, but the others attack you. You are having a battle with giant rats. 2 of them are here. On the very next page is the combat checklist, so I pull out my handy dandy metal dice of pounding and I begin to roll. I have 3 rats and 1 of me, so I make a hit roll. 18. The rat's 2 hit number was above 10. I need above 10 to hit. I roll 1d6 plus add 2, so I just did 8 damage. Subtract that damage from the monster's hit points. That definitely killed one of the rats. 1 rat attacks me. 12 misses. 1 rat attacks me. 11 misses. I attack a rat. 12 hit. This isn't even fair. 7 smash.
Rat misses. I hit. The rats are killed.
Without even a bite. Thank goodness. Because rats have diseases. You've won the battle with the giant rats. Searching the room, you find 100 copper pieces and 100 silver pieces scattered in the messy rat lair as you put them in the sacks that you are carrying. The corridor goes north 30 feet, and then there is a side passage to the left, west. The main corridor continues another 30 feet and then turns left. When you get to the side passage, you see that it goes 10 feet west and opens into a strange room. You may go in and investigate the strange room, or you can go north or south. Do you want to investigate? You enter the strange room to investigate. The room is empty and clean, and the only feature is the orange mouth on the far wall, about 8 feet long. You search the room, listening and looking carefully, but you find nothing. Suddenly, as you are about to leave, the lips of the giant mouth move, and in a big booming bass voice it says, "Surprise! You are here for double or nothing. Ready or not? Here we go. OTTFFSS. What's next in line? If you solve this riddle, your treasure will double. If you fail, it will all disappear. What is your answer?" If you try to leave, you find the way blocked by an invisible force. "You must answer, you know," bellows the mouth. Think about it and decide what the answer. If you guess the answer correctly, you may double the amount of treasure you have. If not, it all disappears and your character is left with none. The answer was E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You suddenly feel less weighted down.
Come back again sometime.
The invisible barrier is gone and you can leave the room. You cannot find anything more here, nor will the mouth speak to you again. After the turn, the corridor goes 50 feet west and opens into a room. You enter a room, not expecting anything. But as you carefully enter, you see two goblins in a far corner. They have swords and seem to be expecting you. They attack and each get a free swing before you can react. You are fighting two goblins. They swing, miss. Miss. You swing. Hit. Kill one. The other one swings, misses. You swing and miss. The other one swings, misses. You swing and hit. 3 damage. Miss. 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 You're terrible fighters. Hit. Dead. You have defeated the pair of goblins, but before you can look around the room, you hear noises from the north. 3 more goblins are coming down the corridor. They have their swords out and look angry. Rolf quickly and confidently dispatches the first goblin with a decapitating thrust. Yeah! However, the next 2 goblins are not to be trifled with, as both hit Rolf, killing our hero. And yet, the gods are not done with Rolf yet, because this adventure has been too short. And so, time rewinds. Rolf is victorious, having taken no damage and killing the goblins, so the video may continue. Hey, congratulations! You have won the Great Goblin Fight. It was a tough battle for one lonely fighter. Don't forget that you started the adventure with your potion of healing, which can cure all your damage if you haven't already used it. But of course, you have maximum hit points. Starting from the north wall of this room, the corridor goes 10 foot north, turns west, and goes 10 foot farther, opening into the east wall of another room. There are more goblins here, but when they see you, they shriek and run through a stout door on the north wall, slamming it behind them. You search the room carefully and find one small bag by the door, apparently dropped by one of the goblins. The bag contains some money and a key. You try to open the door without success. Your key doesn't seem to work. You hear a goblin voice say from the other side in common, "Go away, we don't want any." You may keep trying if you wish, but the goblins seem to have barred the door. The corridor goes 20 feet to the west and opens into a room. The room is empty except for a few small piles of reddish dust. You go into the room and look around. There is nothing here but the reddish dust. When you look closely at the dust, however, you realize that it's rust. You hear a snort, and when you look up, you see a strange-looking creature coming into the room from the western corridor. It looks like a giant armadillo with a long tail. It has 2 feathery feelers on the front. It charges at you. You are fighting the rust monster. If a rust monster hits you, it does no damage. Instead, it makes metal turn to rust. As you run the battle, use the following notes to find the effects. There's no turning back for our fighter. He attacks.
Misses. Miss. Hit. 5 damage. Miss. 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 Hit. 7 damage.
Hit. Your shield turns to rust and falls apart. Hit. The monster is dead. You have slain the horrible rust monster. Searching the room, you find 10 gems laying about, some in cracks and crevices, and some in the piles of rust. The total value of the gems is 600 gold pieces. Woohoo! The corridor goes only 10 foot west before connecting to another corridor heading north. The main corridor continues west into the darkness. The northern corridor goes 30 feet and opens into a room. You go west and come to another room. It has an exit south leading outside and another corridor heading west. You don't want to go to the west. The ghouls are in that direction. You recognize this room as the entrance for your very first adventure. This is where you hit the goblin and he ran away. The corridor goes north and opens into a room. As you peer into the room, you see 2 skeletons with rusty swords standing about 10 feet from you around the corner. Without making a sound, they step forward, grinning horribly, and swing at you. One of them hits for 2 points of damage. The fight is on. You have 6 hit points and 1 less shield. You attack. Miss. 1 skeleton down. 1 hit point. Miss. Miss. Hit! You kill the 2 skeletons. As each one dies, its bones collapse in a heap, and the rusty sword drops to the floor with a clang. You search the area but find no treasure. However, there is a door in the east wall of the room. You carefully examine the door and find nothing strange about it. There is a keyhole in it, though. We have a key! You put the key in the lock and turn until you hear it click. Putting the key away, you open the door. There is a small room behind the door. The room is empty except for 1 large chest by 1 wall. You walk over to it and discover that it's made of heavy wood and metal bands around it. It isn't locked, luckily, so you carefully open it. Alas! It's trapped. Make a saving throw versus magic wand. Rolf rolls a 10. This saving throw is used for many things, generally indicates whether you jump out of the path of danger or are smashed by a beam from a magic wand. However, in this case, the danger is a blade mounted on the edge of the chest and connected to a metal spring. When you open the lid, the blade sweeps out towards you and cuts off poor Rolf's head. Your character has been lost in the dungeon. Don't be upset. It can happen in any Dungeons & Dragons game, and often does. Not as often as it should, probably. Through no fault of yours. That is the end of this adventure. You may start the adventure over if you wish. To do that, be sure not to keep any treasure you may have found before you died. The character should have exactly the same equipment, treasure, and hit points as when you started this adventure. In other words, start over if you want and read number 1. So guys, there you have it. Thank you for sticking with me through the 1983 Basic Edition solo adventure. It's very fun. It's very easy for anyone to learn, and it really holds your hand. But man, it was kind of, I found it interesting. I hope you found it interesting. Once you're done with that, the rest of the book is pretty much learning about the classes, races, a little bit more of the details, what comes next. Here's our classes, equipment, spells, that sort of thing. And then once you're done with this book, it's time, if you are the person in your group, to read the next book. It's time to read the Dungeon Master rulebook. I'm going to try to get a group together and run through the, there's a Dungeon Master group adventure, kind of like the solo adventure in the Players Manual. They have an adventure that you're supposed to run a group through. So, and it tells you exactly what to say and all that. It should be fun. We're going to run through that in a future video soon. But that is the 1983 Basic Boxed Edition. It's great, very nostalgic. I love it. Love all the art, and I appreciate you guys. Oh, I love Larry Elmore. So cool. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and come back, check out the Etsy store. And never forget what I say about warriors with blades. If they got blades, they getting paid. Peace. And never forget what I say about warriors with blades. When they got blades, they ain't got